good evening. A very warm welcome to all the participants and the panelists and the professors from IMT Ghaziabad. And let me start this webinar on changing landscape of business world. And as you can see, in this time when digital revolution is no longer novel and technology has taken all aspects of our life, then there is one name that we have to remember, and that is disruption. So during this era of disruption, I'm not only saying pandemic, disruption can be in any form. It can be global slowdown, it can be due to technological obsolescence, it can be due to any kind of geopolitical situation in the globe, around the globe. So all these problems create some kind of changing in the landscape of business world. And that is what our topic of discussion today. What it is very difficult for us to retain our market share or to increase our market share. So how do we go about it? Now, all these changing landscapes, all these technological changes, all these disruptions, how is it going to affect our business? That is what we will discuss today. Affect our business not only today, but also tomorrow in the coming years. So here I would request all the participants to kindly mute their mics, uh, except for the panelists. There's a lot of echo, so I request all of you to mute your mic, except the panelists who will be uh, talking and speaking on the topic. So let me have the opportunity of welcoming our eminent panelists. And today the panel is a blend of industry and academia. And I have with me Mr. Pankaj Gautam. Pankaj is an electrical engineer, an MTech from IIT Delhi, and was in PGDM part-time batch of IMT Ghaziabad. He started his career in MCD in 1984. And then he moved on to Adani, and he was All India Business Leader and also Senior Vice President in Adore. Now Pankaj is the Vice President of All India Sales and Marketing Head in KC Kotal, India. Pankaj has exposure of diversified sectors like cement, steel, paper, power. We welcome you, Mr. Pankaj Gautam.
Thank you, ma'am.
We have with us Mr. Rajesh C. Rajesh is again an alumnus of IMT Ghaziabad and is currently employed with SBI Card as Vice President, Financial Planning and Analysis. He has vast experience in BFSI sector in the fields of finance, strategy, investor relation, project management, and operations. And Rajesh has also worked in companies like GE, ABN AMRO, then Royal Bank of Scotland. Welcome, Rajesh. Thanks for coming.
Thank you,
on
ma'am.
this weekend, taking out time. Uh, I have the pleasure of introducing my colleague, uh, our professor of IT and Analytics and chairperson of Alumni Committee of IMT Ghaziabad, Professor Reema Khurana. She's a PhD. She herself is an alumnus of IMT Ghaziabad. She has over 27 years of experience. She has a number of publications in refereed journals, and she has presented research across the entire globe, research papers across the entire globe. Thank you, Professor Reema, for agreeing to be a part of the panel. I have another senior colleague, um, Professor N.R. Bhushnurmat. Professor Bhushnurmat has over 44 years of experience, a good blend of industry and academia. And he, he initially started his career as an officer in State Bank of India. Then he moved on to RBI. And he was also the professor and dean of MDI Gurgaon. And at present, he is an adjunct faculty at IMT Ghaziabad. He's basically his area of specialization is banking. And I would also like to add that Professor Reema Khurana has also worked in the industry in NIT and several other very good IT firms, Aptech, etc. She was mentioning to me yesterday. So, gentlemen and the lady and all the participants, let me welcome you once again and thank you for being here in this panel. And I would like, I won't take much of your time, and I would like to start with the webinar right now so that the panelists have moved to talk, because the problem is that I am also from academics. So once I start talking, then I forget that I am the moderator. I will not let that happen with me. So what I'll do is I will request the panelists to give a brief introduction, not only an introduction, I mean their views, rather their views on what they understand by changing landscape in the business world, and how do they feel about it, how has it affected their sector and other sectors. So I would first request Mr. Pankaj Gautam to give his views, and then to be followed by Mr. Rajesh, Professor Reema, and then Professor Bhushnur. So Pankaj, the floor is all yours now. You may take about 7 to 8 minutes. Pankaj, you have to unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, it is audible. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Good evening, and it is my pleasure to be here on the discussion of the current topic. And as ma'am said about the change in the landscape business, I have been associated with business industry almost last 35 years, and there have been lot of turbulence in the last, and it is a time that maybe after 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, we have seen lot of up and downs in the market. When I was in IMT in 2008, that time also it was a global slowdown. Lot of industries were shutting in the US. And now this is another scenario where the business is slowing down. And particular, I can talk about this as per my experience with the industries related with power, telecom, steel, and all. So there have been a lot of changes actually in the last 35 years. If we see particular as there was at one time almost 8 to 10 years back, there was a lot of boom in the power sector when the industries, lot of Chinese companies, they were putting the plants, lot of private players, and it was in fact a radical change in the power sector when suddenly we find that every they were planning to put up a plant here in India and generating some say 1000 megawatt, 2000 megawatt, 5000 megawatt. Lot of companies they came, including the Reliance, Tata, Adani, India, so many players they came into the market, and suddenly the NTPC that time when there was a boom in the power sector, NTPC was almost 30% the power producer during that time, and total capacity that time they were having somewhere around 36,000 megawatt on 2007 or 2008. Then when these private players they came into the market, then the power it became just almost double within the 5-6 years. Lot of plants were commissioned, and suddenly we found that there is enough power into the market. Same scenario happened with the telecom. Telecom also there was a say from 2G to 3G, then 4G, because I was closely associated and I was working with the power and telecom sector. So as I can see, there has been lot of change, and now suddenly as on date, I have been traveling all over India. I have seen almost all the power plants in north, east, west, south, all the state electricity board power plants, NTPC power plants, private power plants. As on date, I can say hardly there may be a 10 to 20% plants which are running at full capacity because of suddenly there is a lower demand market. And not only that, in the last, say, almost 7 to 8 years, or maybe almost 10 years, there have been a lot of change. The pendulum is shifting from thermal to solar. So there you must see that lot of investment in the solar industries, lot of big plants, even when 10, 15 years back, it was a dream that hardly we can generate, say, 1 megawatt or 2 megawatt with the solar capacity. Now we can see the 30 megawatt, 50 megawatt, even 70, 80 megawatt plants are coming up with the solar panels. So there is a quite radical change in the power sector as well as telecom. When at one time that BSNL was the leader, now BSNL, MTNL, they are not the leader anymore. The Jio, Airtel, Vodafone, they have come up. Technology is changing. They came with the 3G technology, 4G technology. Now it is 5G technology, which is likely to come. So there have been a lot of changes. And there is one important thing. If we do not change, if we do not adapt the technologies, then we will be out from the market. The same happened with the BSNL. Same happened with the so many power plants. So we will have to adapt the technologies. We should do the corrective changes which are required for the market. And similarly, that all the leaders, all the down the line, all the company employees, they also should be tuned accordingly. That whatever the changes are happening in the market, they should be aware about the conditions. They should know what is going to the market, and accordingly, they must change the gear as per the market. And as per the strategy, I will say lot of companies who are changing with the time. I have seen closely in the couple of industries in the private sectors. Particular, I have seen the like Hindalco. I have seen in Tata. They have continuously they have been changing. They are adapting the new things, and that is why it's still they are into the market. There are even a lot of plants which I will say during that time they didn't realize that what will happen, because they made the power plant, they made the say 1200 megawatt plant, and with the imported coal, now suddenly the coal price has gone up. Imported coal price is almost double, so then the generation cost is also becoming double. Then, but because scenario now solar at one time when these solar plants they were negotiating to supply the power at the rate of 12 rupees per unit or 14 rupees per unit. Even the solar plant also now they are ready to give at the cost of 3 rupees, even lesser than 3 rupees per unit. So as on date you cannot negotiate to get the power at higher rate, even say suppose 10 rupees, 12 rupees, even suppose if any power producer is generating the power, so it is highly impossible to get the power as on to purchase on that rate. So that is why a lot of changes into the market. Now even the state electricity boards, they have been getting the power from the market who is supplying at the reasonable rate. Like Haryana Power, they have tied up with the private players, not depending only the Haryana State Electricity Board. Similarly, with the UP, they are also not dependent only the UP State Electricity Board. So there are private players that who have a PPA with the state governments, and the state governments also equally they are getting the power from them. So there have been a lot of changes in telecom that I have seen is closely in the last 35 years, and same trend is going to the other industries also. Hello. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello.
Yeah, we can
Yes.
hear you, Rajesh.
Yes.
Sorry, Pankaj.
So
That's
yes.
a very optimistic viewpoint of Mr. Pankaj. Thank you very much, Mr. Pankaj. And as he said that he saw global slowdown even when he was doing his PGDM in IMT Ghaziabad.
Yes.
But that has not really affected his career, you see. because now he's holding a very senior position in his company. And and the best thing is, what he said is, basically we have to adapt to changes. Industry has to tune in to changes. Like when slowdown was there, then there was an opportunity for private power players in the power sector. Then people moved on from thermal to solar. So that is how you adapt with technological changes and the changes in the business scenario. So thank you for sharing your views with us, Pankaj. I move on to Rajesh. Rajesh, would you like to please kindly share your views about your sector and exactly what you understand by changing landscape? What are your suggestions? Rajesh, I think you have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, ma'am, for inviting me to this webinar. It's a pleasure coming back to IMT and speak. I am here as an alumni and I am of IMT and not as representing my company. And I must say that IMT has added a lot of value for me to be able to come and speak here. Now, speaking about the landscape of Indian financial sector, it has evolved over a period of time. And at one point in time, when one spoke about the Indian financial sector, one largely spoke about the banks, and that was also being majorly led by the public sector banks. And now what we see is that there is a plethora of banks and other financial institutions which has come up. So if one see the major changes has been, as Pankaj also said, the technology in the has affected almost all the sectors, and financial sector has been no exception to that. And digitization has actually led to not just a change in the financial sector, but it has actually transformed the entire financial sector in India. What has also helped India is that along with the digitization, the globalization also took place almost parallel a couple of decades back. So what we saw here was that a lot of new concepts from the rest of the world came here. A lot of global companies came here. We started adopting the best practices of and we also have very large banks which can compete in terms of scale and size with other banks with other banks of the other in rest of the world, like State Bank of India, HDFC. These are very large banks, and the government's focus is also to create very large institutions which gives them the scale and the capability to face competition and become successful in the coming times. So digitization has really transformed in a way that it has really empowered the customers. You used to have a time when customers used to go to the banks for even getting a simple transaction like updating of passbooks, getting checks cleared. These days, hardly anybody walks into into a bank branch. The power has been given to the customer way back when the computers were introduced, and now with the laptops, there is a lot of self-service apps where the customer can, at a click of a button, can almost do the entire banking, seamlessly and at real-time basis. Now, while it has given the power to the customer, it has also helped banks to focus on their core areas and take probably the staff out from the core banking operations, which used to take a lot of time and cost. So it has also helped them to optimize their operating efficiencies and focus on their core on their core areas. Now, the digitalization has also been leveraged by the Indian financial sector to get into business analytics. Now we have been talking about big data, but the big data has been there in the financial sector for quite a long time. You look at credit cards, and you look into demat accounts. So all of these players, insurance companies, were dealing in with big data over a period of time. Now, with the development of technology like predictive analytics, artificial intelligence, banks are going a step forward in leveraging that and to find out how you can make the business better for themselves, to increase their margins, and also to make life simple for the customers. Another aspect that is there in the financial sector has been the product innovations. What you see is that it's completely changing. It's not the same year on year. At one point in time, I would just take something like an ATM. ATM used to be something like a very, very fantastic machine. When I first saw the ATM machine, probably 20, 25 years back, I saw that money coming out from the ATM. Now that ATM itself has evolved. It's become touchscreen enabled. It's become, and now there are ATM machines. People are talking about where you do not even need a card to withdraw cash from ATM machines. You probably need an OTP and you can withdraw machines. So that's kind of innovation that's happening. Wallets are mushrooming. Credit card itself is coming up in a big way. You're talking about credit card was symbolic about plastics. Now it need not be. People are doing a lot of online transactions. People are doing transactions on apps. People are doing. There are other ways of spending like QR code scanning. So it's fast changing. So digitization is really helping the banks to become more efficient. It is empowering the customers, and it is also changing the product suite completely. And one more thing, with the product innovation, what is happening is that there are a lot of new players coming into the sector. There are earlier it was just banks there. Now you have NBFCs coming in, then you have small banks coming in. So it's becoming more and more interesting and more and more competitive, and very interesting times for the financial sector.
Thank you, Rajesh. Thank you very much. So thanks for sharing your views. And that's again a very, I would say, very optimistic views, because he has said that, rather digitization has empowered the customers, and it is, customers are now it's more user friendly now for the customers. And so that is in a way very positive. And he also says that banks and other financial institutions have now focused on their operating efficiency and to the core area. That's wonderful. In fact, Rajesh, I'll come back to you and I'll ask you about the mergers of different banks, whether that has helped us in any way or not. Maybe I'll come back to you after I run through the other panelists also. Now, since Rajesh, you have mentioned about digitization and also technological changes, so I would like to ask Professor Reema Khurana. Professor Khurana, since you are an expert of IT and analytics, so I would like to have your views on changing business landscape.
Thanks, Bernali. Am I audible?
Yes, of course, yes.
All right. So this evening is seemingly to be, turning out to be very interesting. And Pankaj and Rajesh, both the views of both the colleagues has been, quite an informative dialect. I would like to, pick on, start from what Rajesh was discussing and then eventually go on to Pankaj and try to connect their opinions and their experiences in the industry with information systems, information technology and analytics, and what is happening in the business landscape. So for a moment, I would like to, kind of take the esteemed audience this evening to a situation where, we've all come from a agriculture age, to industrial age, to what we faced a few years back, late 90s, early 2000 was the information age. Where we live today is actually, I would like to call it a customization age. I would also like to call it another term which I'm very fond of using is an industrialized services economy age. Right now, so what happened in the industrial age when people were producing a lot, and of course Pankaj comes from the industry, the telecom industry. Rajesh, of course, comes from banking, and we also have two finance professors on the panel today. But talking about the industry, when people were producing, so at one point of time they would have experienced economies of scale, because of which the production cost would have become lesser. and the economies of scale would have been passed on to the consumers, and the consumers would get the same products cheaper. So we all experienced that when we were growing up, at least when I was growing up, and I'm sure Professor Busnurmat and Professor Panali are almost my age. Professor Busnurmat is, of course, far more experienced. But when we were growing up, clothes and other consumables were not the same price as we see them today, or the same kind of brands that we see them today. So naturally, somewhere production has been massive, and because of that, the prices have declined. Now, naturally, the kind of profits which the industry would have faced would have been less. Now, in order to increase the profits, people would have said, okay, so now let me make certain things customized, right? So we see customized clothes and customized, vehicles and customized products coming into the market. Now, what is this customization? Customization means collecting data about the consumers and creating a product for those consumers, which they are possibly ready to pay a little more for. Hence, from an industrial age, we come to an information age where we're talking about the data is the new oil, data crunching, and then we talk about customization, personalization on the basis of that data crunching, which we only call as analytics, predictive analytics, other kind of analytics which Rajesh was talking about. So, having said that, we are in a customization age, which is largely a function of technology. Now, Pankaj also mentioned technology. Rajesh also mentioned technology. Technology per se could be different from information technology, but coming from where I come from and coming from to an economy where we are standing today, we normally use the word interchangeably. For us, technology is information technology. Even in manufacturing, where we have set up huge machines, etc., automobile, automation, everything has happened. If you really ask me today, automation is even in manufacturing is a function of information technology because of the IoT devices, right? Internet of Things has made automation of all kinds of technology possible, and that is responsible for the changing business landscape. I was going through various consumer durables like refrigerator and air conditioning prices, and if you really see these are all today not only the production is automated, the use is also automated in terms of you have that Katrina Kaif switching on her air conditioner before she actually enters the room, and that is all IoT, right? And we have cameras which are all IoT linked. So the point that I'm trying to make is everywhere we are collecting data, we are processing it into information. We are using that information to kind of improve on the customer experience, improve on the profitability of the business. That is how the businesses have changed as a function of technology. More than that, I would also like to point out both the power and the banking sector. So Pankaj and Rajesh, respectively, as I mentioned, come from the power sector and from the banking sector. And of course, Pankaj has been with telecom as well. Now, these kind of sectors per se are not equipped to handle technology because their expertise is elsewhere. Their expertise is possibly in telecommunication, banking, financial institutions. As Rajesh mentioned, the core competency is banking. The core competency is telecommunication. But in order to make the banking adopt to the business landscape and make it competitive, we use technology. How does a bank use technology? How does an SBI or an RBI use technology? After all, they do not have teams to develop technology. They do not have teams to maintain their servers. So though normally they would get into an outsourcing relationship with a technology company. Citibank, let's say, outsources to TCS. And then, of course, Deutsche Bank outsources to TCS. There are banks which outsource to Infosys. OBC, PNB are outsourcing to Infosys. Now, so in reality, if you look at the industry, it's divided into two kinds of companies. One is an application company. The other is a system development company. Application company, I would like to say are the ones which have core competency different from IT. And the system development companies are the ones which have competency which is pertaining to IT and IS development. Right? Now, for any business to sustain and to grow, you need core competency and you need competitive advantage. For a bank, for a telecom sector, for a manufacturing sector, for a healthcare sector, for a hospitality sector, name it. The core competency is with them, but the competitive advantage comes from a system development company, right? So, and hence these two together are changing the business landscape globally is what I would like to submit to the panel and to my esteemed audience.
Thank you, Professor. So that is exactly how I started the introduction, that technology has entered our each and every aspect of life, be it business or in our personal life. And she has very beautifully mentioned that, the technological applications, although we have our core expertise, but the help of technological business houses have actually helped us in having competitive advantage and making our products and services customized. I hope I'm right, Professor Rima?
Perfect, ma'am, on the dot.
Yeah, all related to IT. Thank you very much, since we are talking of technology. So now I move on to Professor Bhushnur Math. Professor Bhushnur Math, since you have also worked in RBI sector, sir, maybe and in other banks, so maybe if you could highlight your understanding about changing business landscape, and also if you could highlight how regulatory bodies and how regulation plays a role when there is any kind of business landscape change in business landscape, or when we are anticipating some kind of change in the business world.
Okay, Professor Barnali.
Mute yourself.
I think I have unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
I'm audible. Okay. One of the
Sir, I
there
think
is a
there is a problem.
am I okay now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please. Go.
Okay. Well, there is a plus and minus being the last panelist, but the plus is saying that yes, I agree with all what people have said, which is also the minus. But I was listening to this and I was thinking for some time as to what to say, because changing business, if I start, you should all remember that I have been working since 1975, which makes it 45 years, which may be more than the age of the participants and my colleagues also. So I thought I'll just, before I go to what Professor Barnali asked me, I'll briefly list out, I won't explain because they are self-explanatory, some of the epoch-making things that have happened in the last 10 years, last decade or so. I'll start with what Professor Rima Khurana explained. I'll just dish out some of the names, some of the topics in information technology. Yes, information technology has changed everything, I would say, everything. I'll come to the regulatory part a little later, but including regulatory, it has changed everything. And I am a physics electronics student, and at my days, digital was a new concept. And you can imagine what all changes I have seen. So in IT, analytics, and these days I find my students doing something almost real-time analytics, which is really something to take decisions. The big data, the artificial intelligence, machine learning, chatbots, video chats, even our webinar, these have all been disruptors, as we call it. I don't like the word disruptor, but these have all been agents of change. One needs to understand how they have changed every little bit, which leads to online marketing, sales, and the creation of a marketplace. These are some of the things that have changed the way we need to think. Professor Rima mentioned outsourcing. I will go a little step ahead and call it unbundling the chain, right from raw materials till the customer to the collection of payment. The fintech, of course, is a well-known disruptor or system of change. And as Rajesh mentioned, the payment systems have changed and are going to change considerably. In fact, I feel companies like SBI Cards and all have to think a lot about it. So much so that we are now having an all-encompassing ecosystem. Think of Reliance, Jio, whatever they are trying to do now. I mean, we are still trying to guess what is going to happen. They are going to bring everything together, including the local mom and pop stores. So these are the things I wanted to list. Now, some of the things that have happened in the regulatory side or the developmental side is that in the last 10, 20 years, the financial market systems and procedures have changed so much that they are very reliable. A lot of data is generated, a lot of audit trail is there, so it's quite mind-boggling. Most important is like the ad at one time went, geography has become history. You can sit anywhere and do a transaction in any market throughout the world, rules permitting, of course. In addition to that, recently there has been a change in the insolvency and bankruptcy code, which affects the businesses very much. Because if it is not a well-run company, it is going to be wound up. There is no more saying that it's my company, I have grown it, so I do not want to do it. So IBC is going to be a game changer from the regulatory side. Net, I would say that one needs to, this is where the management part of that comes into it. If you are a business manager, one needs to reinvent constantly, which reminds me of the Alice in Wonderland often quoted quote, running fast to be in the same place. We need to run very fast to be in the same place. So we have to reinvent constantly. Marketing has changed. I'm not a marketing person, but I've read a lot and I'm seeing that everybody needs to know the focus which used to be on goods product and physical products has now moved to service and the experience of the customer. This is the latest thought in marketing. How does the customer feel? And that from there we draw the conclusions how the business should carry on. The last one that I wanted to point out is that it reminded me of Peter Drucker, who long back talked about the knowledgeable worker. Now, that has become a reality. It has become more than a reality. And how one nurtures the HR has become a very important thing for businesses. Some of the companies in this pandemic have goofed it up, according to me. Some have taken care of their employees. Inshallah, the pandemic will be over very soon. And we need to those companies who have taken care of their employees or the human resources will be paid dividends. Now, very briefly, what Dr. Bernali asked me was, how has the regulatory bodies changed? I have been a regulator for more than 26 years, so I should not be saying this, but the regulator is always one or two steps behind the market. The market people innovate and the regulator understands, tries to understand, and then try to put a perimeter around it. The regulators have been successful, I would say, very successful in understanding the changes that are there and bringing in systems and procedures and reacting to the demands of the time. I'll quote only two. There are a long list that is there. One, I said that the markets are good, etc. There's dependable. I'll quote two, which are very, one is the two-factor authentication. The two-factor authentication is unique as far as I could make out. And this is the insistence of the Reserve Bank of India to make it secure. In the West, when I go to the US, my credit card is debited automatically when I use a Uber. And when I operate on Amazon.com, my credit card is debited. There is no OTP and such things. So there is a huge potential for frauds in that case. In India, we have the Reserve Bank of India. People didn't like it initially, but the two-factor authentication has been appreciated. Unless new security systems come in, the two-factor system is our savior. The second one is the development of the UPI, Unified Payment. I forget the I part of it. It's a new platform where even feature phones can operate. In this, the money moves from one account to another account instantaneously, not going through an online website, etc. It's a fairly secure and things like this. And to make it compatible or take care of the speed, the two-factor is not there. Two-factor authentication is not there in a UPI or BHIM platform payment, but there is a limitation on the amount of it. So these two show that the Reserve Bank of India has been alive, is willing to listen, is willing to change and come out with suitable. So I think I'll stop here because we need to have some discussion and things.
Thank you so much. Thank you for summarizing your 45 years of experience, Professor Bush Nurmat. Since you focused on reinventing and you emphasized on more and more focus on customers, so I'd like to move on to Mr. Pankaj Gautam. Mr. Gautam, since you're from marketing and you have experience of diverse sector, so I just want to ask you that do you think that because of all the changes in the dynamics of business world, or to foresee the changes, do you think that marketing strategy and advertising strategy will change accordingly, or it should be also dynamic in order to adjust with the changes? Pankaj, please unmute yourself.
Pankaj, you have to unmute.
Hello. Yeah.
Yes, Pankaj, you are audible.
Okay. So the change already been taking place, and most of the industries they are changing with the time and as per the requirement of the market. In fact, as Madam Reema Khurana, she spoke about this IT help and the IoT thing for the industry. So as on date, we see all the industries, whether this is a power sector, telecom sector, and all the industries. So everywhere it is related with the IoT. So all the, as on date, say all the equipments, all the power plants, or all the telecom sectors which we see as on date, these are somehow related with the IoT. And I can see as on date, I can see on my cell phone the generating capacity and the emission norms of the power plant. So all those, even all the pollutants norms as defined by the government, say whether this is a SPM emission or it is a sulfur emission or this is a NOx emission, I can see as on date on my cell phone. So these are, or industry is not asking extra money for that, because it has become a necessity for the industry to develop all the equipments and the techniques to provide all those features in the system. So as on date, if I discuss, say, about NTPC Noida, so in NTPC Noida, I can see in the plant all the status of all the plants, whether this is a Dadri, it is a Farakka, or it is a Ramagundam, all the plant status I can see there in the room, the emission level, the generation, how many plants are running, all the units it can be. So IoT, it has become an integral part of the system as on date. And it is not only the IoT. There have been the cloud-based systems. There have been WhatsApp is also becoming very say business friendly as on date. Lot of say websites are there. So all the apps are there. So many apps are coming up. So all these digital techniques and this has become an integral part of all the companies, all the system, all the companies as on date.
Thank you, Mr. Pankaj. Mr. Rajesh, since I asked something regarding marketing and advertisement strategy from Mr. Pankaj, same thing I would like to kind of ask you, because you are working in a bank, I mean SBI card, you have worked in banks, and you see that you do some planning and budgeting, some kind of forecasting, and which now also you are doing as a financial planner, and you see that you prepare a budget for 1 year and all of a sudden there is some kind of disruption, some kind of change, and we call it dynamic, something like pandemic, this COVID. We had never thought of a situation of this kind, and so you must have prepared a 5-year master plan or an annual plan or quarterly plan. How do you think that when you prepare a plan, how do you basically see to it, adjust that, what kind of planning do you do? I mean, this is what my question is basically, how do you forecast? How do you forecast when there is anything can happen anywhere in the world? So keeping those different kinds of scenarios, how do you think that you can best do the financial planning and forecasting?
Yeah, ma'am, planning in any time is always a difficult task. I mean, it is always uncertain, and because the assumptions and the forecast or the inputs that you get could completely go wrong, and and then you are left to fight for meeting up the plan or changing your strategies. But now the corona has completely taken it to a different level, because you don't even know what the demand for a particular product or the transactions will be the next day. And on top of it, you have all these lockdown effects, because you don't know in which city. We are still facing that, part of Bangalore gets closed, or Bengal gets closed, or some city like Chennai gets closed over weekends. And in India, it's the weekends when a lot of transactions take place in the retail sector. So those uncertainties are there, and therefore most of the companies now are going into something which I call it as scenario planning. You don't make one plan, but you make 2 or 3 kinds of scenarios, and make sure that the organization is ready for it. At the same time, the role of a CFO has become really dynamic now. Generally, you would see a CFO being a number cruncher. Now he has to wear a strategy hat also. So what we see and what we speak to others also, what people are doing is that they're taking this crisis as more like an opportunity, seizing the opportunity, and trying to change the business model, or changing the operating models of their business, negotiating with their local vendors to optimize the cost, relooking at how we should do the activities. So the traditional way of operating, probably all of us have to relook, and we have to go into a different tangent of looking at how we can optimize the cost part, because I'm focusing on cost here, because almost every business now would find it difficult to grow their revenues. Especially with the lockdown, you would see that consumers are spending less, the production is halted. So the days when we would see a 10%, 20%, 30% growth in some sectors may not happen in the short run. So it becomes even more important now to focus on the cost side, to look at efficiencies, especially technology again comes into play. How I can leverage the technology to reduce probably manpower costs, or increase efficiencies in my own company. That's on the operational aspect. Second, when I look at my planning, maintaining the liquidity of the company becomes also more important. It's just not a bottom line game, because remaining solvent for a company is the first foremost task. And what is happening is that the disruptions in the business process is having a big impact on the payment cycles. What we see is that if there is stress with other businesses, those businesses getting shut down, your customers are unable to pay, the debts take longer to realize, while you still have to remain solvent and pay, service your debts. And once you're short of working capital, the existence of the company can itself be a problem. So I'll just break this. I'll just end this and break it up into 2 or 3 levels. That one is that one has to look into the working capital planning much more rigorously. One needs to, on top of it, talk to the banks how you can reservice your loans and make your working capital a smooth affair. Speak to your vendors. And ensure that you remain solvent all the time. It becomes difficult now, but it's a task that every business has to do. And number 2 is focus on your business model. Use this opportunity to re-engineer, relook at your processes and see better ways of doing it. Third thing is, speak, go to the last level, speak to the local guys at the sales. If it's a retail, this thing, you'll have to go to the, probably area sales manager, see about the demand for a packet of biscuits today. If I talk about my own company, probably talk how the accounts would get created, how much spends will happen on the cardholder. So those are the things that you have to speak to everyone. You have to keep your communication lines open. You have to speak to the other function leads and you have to keep your ears to the ground. There has to be real-time information coming in. You have to be dynamic. You have to be ready for changes at a short notice, and also ensure that the company is ready for as I said, changes. If things go wrong, do I have a scenario B? Do I have a scenario C? And make sure that at all times, if I have to implement the change or you have to end a process, end a product line, I'm ready to do that. And plus, any change, any operating plan will not happen without the active participants of the people of the company. So there has to be an active participation from all the employees, all the function leads. So it has to be an organization-wide affair, and it's just not a financial planning which rests with this year.
Yes, thank you. Professor Rima, Professor Rima, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted, because Rajesh has talked about cost optimization and cost efficiency. So I wanted to ask you, because you are an expert of outsourcing, so do you think that outsourcing helps in optimizing cost in some way?
See, that is a decision for the organization to take, whether having the technological developments in-house would be beneficial to the organization, or whether outsourcing this to established company, an established IT player would be beneficial. That entirely depends on how much they wish to outsource, what are the processes they wish to outsource, and for how long they wish to outsource, right? But yes, we have to remember that if the organizations decide, for example, Nestle decides to, build the IT systems within, then there are costs associated with that, which include a hiring of the relevant skills and the talented people, their growth within the organization, buying of the infrastructure, buying software licenses, developing the product, and then maintaining the product in-house. Now, there is a cost. Now, versus the cost of outsourcing this entire activity to an established player and leveraging the technological the technological upgradations that they do from time to time to the development. Because for a system development company, if they create a product, and so that by nature the information systems economy works like this fact that I develop a product and I sell it to different organizations. So naturally, I'm able to, kind of make it more profitable for myself and then pass on the cost to the application company, right? So that entirely depends on what is the decision being taken by the application company, by the FMCG or whatever sector the company, or maybe banking the company is from, and the extent of process automation they wish to do. So that is how they have to, understand the cost.
Thank you. My last question to Professor Bhushnur, and then I will take questions of the participants. Professor Bhushnur, I just would like to ask you, how has fintech affected banks and NBFCs We don't have much time, so maybe in 2-3 lines, because during this pandemic situation also, or during global crisis, every time we have seen fintech affecting banks, NBFCs, etc. So if you could highlight in 2-3 lines, sir.
I'll not take up the pandemic situation, because pandemic situation has shown one thing, that liquidity planning and planning for stability for at least 3 months is absolutely essential. We working on very thin working capital or very fine things. These are a little difficult these days, but in general, the fintech has affected the NBFCs because competition has become very severe now. We have online lending portals and things like that. The fintech has primarily, as of now, affected the payment instruments, and the earlier system of both banks and NBFCs, earlier system of float, checks and delays are all gone. It's instantaneous payment, instantaneous receipt. And so they have to work differently. So NBFCs which are lending now are facing a challenge from online lending portals. The fintech webinar, some conference, I was hearing that they are now, IT is enabling what are called account aggregators. So information is not a difficult thing now. So everything would be available, which will enable online platforms to take over. And therefore, competition is one major thing that is there. As far as banks are concerned, liquidity issues, liquidity management becomes a problem, because we can, liquidate FDs at any point of time, etc. So I come back to the main this thing. Like, for example, another one would be credit cards. I would like to ask Rajesh about and think about it, because credit cards may become a passe, because at the bottom of the pyramid, people are using UPI payments because there is no charge involved in that. So everything has to be thought of. NBFCs definitely have to think, and banks have been thinking, but there is more to do.
Thank you, sir. Last 2 minutes question to Mr. Rajesh C. and Mr. Pankaj Gautam, since you are alumni of IMT Ghaziabad. So if you could give some tips to our PGDM part-time aspirants of IMTG, how they should shape up, how like IMT will shape up their career, what they should do to shape up and come to a level of the level like you people are, both of you are. So some kind of tips. Pankaj, let me start with you, and then Rajesh, I'll come to you. A quick tip, because I'm sure that participants must be having a lot of questions they would like to ask the panelists. So quick tip from you, Pankaj.
My suggestion would be the students that they, whatever the market situation is, so initially understanding the company and understand the consumer is very important. So instead of if you join any company and all, you go to sale or maybe in other department or finance or any industry. So instead of giving, you must look for the solution basically. What is the best solution, optimal solution should be given. So should be worked it out. And so instead of just selling the product and all, you should go for the solution, and it should be the optimized solution, as because the user and they want at the reasonable cost, they will not pay more. Apart from that, two suggestions for the upcoming the business managers, that they should be humble, they should be honest with themselves, with the company, and there should not be any compromise with the values that we learn with the IMT or any education institution and from the home. Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely tips for the participants. And Rajesh, Please add something to it. Kindly
Yeah,
give them, share their, your experience.
Pankaj has really given them some nice tips to students once they pass out of IMTG. So I would limit myself to how they should conduct while they are in IMTG. It's a great campus with excellent professors and a great library. I would encourage you to use the facilities that IMT provides and attend the classes regularly. I think that's a challenge for working professionals, but one should do that. Remain updated, ask a lot of questions to professors. I think they're always there to help you out. They always help us. And some of the assignments may look silly to students, but I would believe, and that's what some of my batchmates did, even a simple thing like making a PPT really helped us when we brainstormed. And once you pass out, those things will really help you in future. So I would just urge you to take it seriously. You're in good hands. And congratulations for joining the IMT.
Thank you very much. Now I open the floor to the participants. In case you have some questions, please ask the panelists. You can unmute yourself and ask the panelists. Any question that you would like to ask? Yes, Anurag. Yes, Anurag.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, Anurag. Hello. You please ask the panelists.
Hi, good evening, all. That's a night and good pleasure to meeting all you on the same panel.
Good evening,
So,
Anurag.
good evening, ma'am.
Pleasure is ours.
Yeah. So I do have a question from Pankaj. So since this all companies are struggling because of post-pandemic, they are planning after COVID. So what exactly the banks are looking for financial supporting? Because the repo rate, if I'm talking about the RBI and the government of India already have some work on repo rates. So what exactly the banks are looking for the financial stability and financial stimulus to the corporate sectors?
I think
Because
that's a question for Rajesh, either Rajesh or Professor Bujnurmat. Rajesh,
I think
maybe
for
you.
Rajesh.
Rajesh, yes. Rajesh?
Yes.
I am in the cards division, so I would not be exactly aware about how the banks would be facing this situation. I would pass it on to Professor Bujnurmat.
Okay.
Yeah, I would put it this way: the banks would definitely made as per the schedule. At the same time, banks are partners in businesses, and they are aware that the situation is bad and people may not be able to pay as and when it should be. On the other hand, the Reserve Bank of India is also aware of these constraints. This is something like a force majeure situation, and we are not aware of what it is. What has been done is that the Reserve Bank of India has brought in what we call regulatory forbearance, meaning that if the companies are unable to pay the EMIs or whatever is due on date, they need they can postpone it by 3 months. The interest will be charged on the interest, etc., etc. This controversy was there, but if companies are able to pay, if their liquidity position helps them, they should pay. This otherwise they'll pay interest on interest. So this has brought to the fore that, see, from the Reserve Bank point of view, they have said that this will not be treated as NPA and therefore the banks are okay and things like that. From the bank's point of view, what is owed to the banks has to be paid. And therefore the companies are getting some time to some leeway, some breathing space to arrange their finances. So this is what is being done. About repo rate, reducing the rate, etc. This I would not look at it in the situation of the pandemic. Right now, the most important thing is for companies to be to keep their nose above the water level, which means that if they should try to pay their dues as and when they arise. Otherwise, the liquidity or the stability or the solvency of the company could be questionable. So this is what is from the bank's point of view.
So what exactly are you looking for if I'm looking for the EBITDA for the products in terms of for different sectors, maybe from the power, maybe from automotive, maybe from FMCG, retail. So,
Yeah.
what exactly your opinion on that? Because now the companies are having some crash crunches also. They are struggling in terms of the product cycle. In spite of that, there are a lot of overheads on them. So,
Yeah.
what exactly is their policy in terms of looking for their EBITDA for the further
Uh,
progression?
I don't think one should apply the normal methods of appraisal in these pandemic times. Uh, so I don't think banks are looking or doing an appraisal that way. What is required is the existing customer should be able to manage the liquidity position till things improve and the economy starts. And plus, acquiring new customers or giving new loans, etc., I'm sure they would be discounting the fact or taking into account the fact that these 3 months or 4 months or till things stabilize are difficult times. But I would like to emphasize, because I worked as a banker, I worked as a regulator, both sides, and as a teacher also. I would like to emphasize that banks need to be repaid, and banks are going to look after themselves, should be looking after themselves. So their normal appraisal methods will have to be tweaked a little bit for new customers. The existing customers have to be handheld till they rise above the pandemic problems.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
and
much.
Anurag, I would like to add to it that
Yeah.
as Rajesh was mentioning that we have to now focus on optimizing cost. So if you want to enhance your EBITDA, so in that case, it's very difficult to improve revenue in this situation. So maybe you could try to reduce your cost to have a higher EBITDA. But also, as Professor Bushnur has said, that banks will not really use the same appraisal techniques that they have been using in our positive, optimistic times.
Fine, fine. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any other question from the panelists, please? Any other question?
Hello, yeah, this is Nikhil Khurana. Can you hear me?
Yes, Nikhil. Please ask.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Yeah, I was listening and I was a part of almost every webinar. And we majorly
Thank
we
you.
discussed
Thank
about
you.
that that corona part, pandemic part only, and most of the time was yeah, because this is the only thing which we had in mind in the today's world. My question is, there is one industry which we have never talked about in all last 4-5 webinars. That is the entertainment industry, the event industry,
Event
which is
industry.
actually,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
which has been, what I feel, it has been down because the gatherings have stopped. Till the time the gatherings don't come up, and if any panelist is from the event industry and have been a part of in any of the way, can please answer my question. What kind of a digital change or a technology change, or what should be done to just make this industry, at least it should not be lost, because there are many artists, there are many big industries also which are like, there was a time when we spend somewhere around 50 lakh rupees for a marriage, but today it has come to 4 to 5 lakhs or maybe 2 lakhs. So the money which is being spent by the consumer, the customer, has completely reduced. So there are many families, there are many in the big industries, they have affected their cost. So what would be the change in this particular industry which can be grabbed or which can be inculcated? Please, anyone, please.
Okay, Pankaj, since you have experience of working in various industries and also you're a very senior marketing person, maybe you could take this question on event
Yes,
industry. Yeah.
I would like to say two things. See, because of this situation, particular this event companies or tourism industries, and these are hotel industries, these are very much affected. And of course, you are right that, the because physical presence is required for earning the money. If there is a event is taking place and physically persons are not present over there, so ultimately you can't earn the money. So like say now people they are avoiding for the tour and all. They are doing all sitting either in the office or at home. They are doing the video conferences. So similarly, this the event management is also very much affected, and any kind of digital marketing and all, you do the conferencing, video conferencing, some make some groups, make some apps, do some something which you can sell to the digital media or web community. So that is only possible. Otherwise, come there, they celebrate there. It is going to be a very difficult time for the tourist, event, and the hotel industries.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Pankaj, if some industry is suffering because of the changing landscape, it's always, like another industry which is booming. So that is there. I mean,
Yes.
evolution is always
Yes.
there, and it is
Yes.
always survival of the fittest. You change, you adapt yourself with the changing dynamics. So with that, I think we have run out of time. So we have now we have to wind up our session. And I thank all the participants, all the panelists
Thank
for
you.
being here on a weekend and sharing their experience, sharing their views. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you,
ma'am.
Rajesh.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Pankaj.
you,
Thank you.
Pankaj. Thank you, Rajesh. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. It's
Thank
been
you,
a
ma'am.
pleasure talking to
Thank
all
Here,
of you.
same here.
Thank you. Same here. And thanks to all
Yes.
the participants.
Thank you.
Thank you.